Hey, so today I'm in Newbury, almost on the racecourse with Geoff Lester. Thanks very much for agreeing to talk to us today, Geoff. Worked on the Sporting Life from 1964 to 1998. Now, was that a good career move?
Oh, it was magic, yeah. It's something that I always wanted to do since I was 12 years old. I wanted to be a racing journalist, and it's been a dream. It's taken me all around the world, from Dubai, America, Australia. So, fantastic life.
Okay, so right before we go into a deep dive into your life with the life, can you give us a bit of background? You know, where did you come from before you joined, and how you actually got that chance?
Yeah, I was born actually close to Twickenham rugby ground. So, in fact, we went to the other week. My son took me to tour the rugby ground, one of those special tours, and I think it was 20 of us on the tour. And someone said, "Has anybody trodden this hallowed turf before?" And I said, "Yeah, I have." So he said, "When was that?" And I said, "1956. We used to have our school sports here. I won the egg and spoon race." So that was where I was born. I went to school there, and I just loved all the school life. I had a great time. I was with my pals now. We still meet up now. I mean, when I was 5 years old, started school. My best mate Ray is he's still my best mate now. I was his best man. He was our best man. So. We saw him last weekend actually. So you stay with people like that. But basically, when I was, we move on to when I was just at school, when I was in the secondary school. I just knew I wanted to be a journalist, a racing journalist. So because I'd written to Peter O'Sullivan, I used to take the Daily Mirror. My family took the Daily Mirror, and I used to put my tips in, write them down against Newsboy and Bouverie on the Mirror. And I was doing quite well, so I thought I've got definitely a chance. So because my dad had taken me to racing when I was 12 to Kempton on Easter Saturday, and it was literally, we walked into Kempton. As soon as we walked in, there was Prince Monolulu, that colourful guy with the headdress, shouting, "I got a horse, I got a horse!" And there was this other fellow called Curly, and my dad was a sucker. It was a lovely man, Dad. My dad, he was a hard gold, but in a 3-horse race, he'd backed 2 of them. And so he said, "Well, this guy's shouting, he's got 3 winners, and he says they're all guaranteed winners." I said, "He would, Dad, but the guy behind is going to have different horses." "Listen to the man," he said. "Listen to the man." So we listened to him, and then we all backed to buy. But he was selling these tips, half a crown each, 12.5p now these days. And all 3 won. It was unbelievable. Couldn't believe it. Palatina was the first one, Leicester Piggott. Falls of Shin won the Rosebery, 108 for Harrow and Wellington. And he gave it a third. The Nice Guy won the Up with Irish, the Guineas Trail for Ireland. So I remember all 3 of them. And I think I was on 5 shillings a week pocket money, and I think I won £20 that day. So I put a lot, and was £20 in front going to the last. And so I put a tenner, which was the biggest bet I've ever had, I think, on my favourite jockey, Leicester Piggott, obviously with my surname. Always followed Leicester, and it won at 20 to 1. So had things been different, I lost my pocket money, I might have gone into a bank. But as it happens, it was the stepping stone to being a racing journalist.
That's fairly courageous punting for a young lad, that was, wasn't it?
Could have been foolish, but it worked out.
Now, you weren't really you didn't go to the right school for that sort of job you were applying for, did you? You weren't sort of one of the Eton or Harrow contingent. So, how did you manage to get in there?
Yeah, it was a secondary school, but everyone said it was the best secondary school in Twickenham. So, but when you get to the 14, 15, 15, I suppose, you had the careers officer. I had to meet the careers officer, and she said, "What do you want to do when you leave school?" But by this time, I'd written to Peter O'Sullivan, who told me to write to the Sporting Life. He sent me a letter back saying, "Write to the Sporting Life, Sporting Chronicle, and the Racing Blue." So I wrote to the Sporting Life, and I got invited to an interview. But beforehand, I had this chat to the careers officer, who said, "What do you want to do when you leave school?" And I said, "I want to be a racing journalist." And she said, "You won't be able to be a journalist because you're not going to university." So I said, "I will be a journalist." And I said, she said, "Look at your reports. You're fantastic at maths and English. But maths is brilliant. You should go into a bank, 9 till 5, nice steady job." So I don't want to go into a bank. I just know I'm going to be a racing journalist. And she said, "I admire your bravery," she said, But she said, I'll give you all the literature you need to be a journalist. But I think, honestly, the only way you got getting to Fleet Street is on a Monopoly board. So I was a bit peeved with that. And fast forward to 1988 when I became Racing Journalist of the Year. And the Lord Derby gave me the award in the Royal Garden Centre, the Lord Derby. And I would have loved to have dragged that woman right up to the stage to see I'd made it. But from, I was lucky. But I started right at the bottom at the Sporting Life, £5.15 shillings a week on August the 17th, 1964. So it was, I was an office boy. But gradually, I just worked up the ladder, and I started doing the marker sheet, which was the most important page of the paper according to bookmakers, page 2. And then I did the results section, taking all the results down, and then I moved on to man on the spot team, and then they said that, on 1971, move on there. Does someone out there want to go to the Arc de Triomphe tomorrow? No one. All the people in front of me didn't want to go. So I said, I'll go. So they gave me the ticket and go to Paris, and all the expensive flight was done, and people took me there on horse racing abroad. And I watched the race. I was all on my own, didn't know anybody, couldn't get a press room. So Mill Reef won, and I think I had a tenner on Mill Reef. I won at 10-7 on. And I just went to the Irish bar afterwards, and all the English people and the Irish people were celebrating. And basically, I bought a half bottle of champagne, and which cost 20 quid for a half bottle of champagne. I only won £7, and the guy said, we haven't got any glasses left because the British horse has won. So I said, don't worry about it. I'll drink it out of the bottle, because I don't think I'd ever had champagne then. So I drank the champagne out of the bottle, and as you know, it goes straight up your nose. So it was eventful, but that was Mill Reef. It was a wonderful start. That was in 1971, and I think I did the next, every arc then, working for the Life. Sansan was the next one, and right up to 1997, which was the last time we did the arc for the Sporting Life.
Because you'd have thought that would have been quite a coveted job, the on-course.
I know.
So nobody wanted to go to the arc, so you got the on-course job on the strength of what you did that day. So there was a lot of big names and a lot of big characters, I'd imagine, in those days. Yeah. Most of whom had come from places like Harrow and Eton. So how did you fit in the secondary school boy with those guys? Yeah,
Len Thomas was the number one. He lived in Hounslow, very close to me, and he used to take me racing anyway. Len, he was a lovely man, and he was the number one. He didn't want to go. He didn't want to be travelling. George Ennett was old Etonian George, but a great fellow, great friend of mine, George. And I just visited him. They suddenly asked me to go to ordinary meetings on a Saturday, when I was working Monday to Friday. But I said, no, I'll do an extra day working Saturday. I used to go to Market Raisin and these sort of places, and everyone was fine. I used to turn up for the, just going out. I was keen. I mean, I've always been keen on racing, and from going with my dad after that first day at Kempton. I mean, we went to Derby when St Paddy won at 1960, my first Derby there. And so I used to always go to the big meetings, and the journalists were just great. They welcomed me with open arms.
There was some mentioned some larger than life characters. We'll mention your book in a minute, which I'll bring it over and you show the viewers. People like Richard Braylin, those sort of people. I mean, was there a fine line between confidence and arrogance for some of them?
Yeah, some of them were. I mean, Richard, for instance, he was a great guy that, Chris Paul, another fella. Chris Paul was Christopher Paul from the Standard, and Richard Bell from the Guardian. And Richard, he told everybody, all the Guardian readers, to back Shergar in the Derby in 1981.
That was the bet like men.
Yeah, bet like men. That was his first paragraph on the day. Now is the time to bet like men. And it was wonderful. But Richard, one time, Chris Paul said, I don't think anybody would beat me at eating oysters, on a number of oysters, when we were in Paris one day. And Bearline said, I'll take you on. And it was a non-event, actually. But I think Chris Paul he got halfway, he got through one plate, and Richard Bearline just kept going another 2 plates after that. He's a great man, Richard, and really were close to people like Ryan Price and all the top trainers. And that was the thing, Simon, really, meeting these trainers sometimes in the early days. You know, I remember Jim Stanford from the Daily Mail. He went up to Noel Merlis after a win and said, "Well done, Noel." And Noel said, "To my friends, I'm Noel. To you, I'm Mr. Merlis." So, but people like that, and he used to, Bernard Van Cutsem used to ask him, "What's the plans?" And he said, "That's between me and my owner." You know, and it was. And so, you know, if you were writing copy, you couldn't sort of say, "Oh, this is a great classic trial. Now we're gonna we're gonna take another race before the Derby," and it just didn't work out like that. But nowadays we're so lucky. We've moved on, but you know, with Nicky Henderson and Paul Nicholls on the flat and on the jumpers rather, and you know, John Gosden and all those trainers, I get on great with them all these days.
Now, one of the names, you've mentioned some of the top names there, but I was always attracted to the more earthy types. I believe you knew the infamous Geoffrey Bernard.
Yeah, Jeffrey and I we used to sit next to each other. We did a few trips together, and in fact, his last ever trip. We were in Paris for the Arc. I mean, he was a fierce. I mean, I loved the time he got absolutely drunk as a skunk, as people say, at a dinner in London in Newmarket, and he ended up because he used to write Colonel Mad, I think he was, in Private Eye. I think that was his nom de plume, and he got so drunk that he just threw up all over the Jockey Club table, and but he had to write about it afterwards. And he said they told me I looked like a beetroot that's just heard bad news, and within 30 seconds, he said it was like a Vesuvius.
No, but we're talking about the top journalists. You
Yep.
were actually officially Racing Journalist of the Year in 1988,
Yeah.
voted for by your peers.
Well, that's the thing, actually, Simon. Voted for by our peers, because a few people said, "I thought they'd get round to you eventually," because you know it was a different one every year. But no, once we started voting for ourselves, it was, you know, I think it's the way it is. It always feels it's like the football awards these days. When you're voted by your fellow journalists, it was really it was a huge honour, and yeah, I'll never forget that.
Now, racing journalists, I'm told, are envied by other sports journalists because of the access that they get to the very top people, as you sort of mentioned before, even if it might have been a bit frosty in the old days. How many of the jockeys and trainers in your contact book sort of became pals, actual friends?
Yeah, I mean, I was lucky. You know, I mean, the Lester Piggott was always quite difficult to get hold of. But you know, when you know, I remember being when he won the Arc in Paris on Rheingold and he'd been around for quite a time then, Lester. And I thought maybe this is the one. You know, it's his first Arc, and we retire now. And I remember sitting in the weighing room with him because you could get into weighing room at Longchamp in those days. And I said, "Lester, well, you know, will this be it?" "What do you mean?" So I said, "Well, you know, you always wanted to win the Arc," and he's probably in his 40s then. And he said, "No, I've got a few years yet." He kept on, does it? He was, you know, and then he ends up winning, and I was great. One of the best days racing ever when he came back in America and won on the Royal Academy in New York.
I remember watching it on the telly. Even the commentator couldn't believe it, could he?
Yeah, it was, and I didn't like to tell Lester I backed the second Priolo.